안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕코입니다. 어깨가 아파요. 오늘도 운동을 해보겠습니다. 지금 비가 그쳤어요. 아침에 새벽에 비 미친듯이 왔어요. 다들 조심히 출근하셨는지 잘 모르겠습니다. 운동할게요. 역시 운동할 땐 CNN!
Going on inside the country. He has not acknowledged the surge in cases, what's going on with hospitalizations, and now what we're seeing with this death rate being the highest reported cases today, highest reported deaths today that it has been in 2 weeks. He has not responded to that. He has not commented on that until today. The last time he really talked about coronavirus was over 2 weeks ago when he did that event on reopening schools. So what the president did today is what really advisors have been begging him to do, which is just to acknowledge what's going on throughout the country, and the concern and the reason that was really the driving force behind the president doing this, Don, was these poll numbers he was looking at that were showing that the way he was responding to coronavirus was really hurting his re-election chances.
Dr. Gupta, I have to ask you, I mean, today I watched the president talk about wearing masks, advocate for somewhat advocating for it. And I kept thinking, what was so hard about that? Because if we saw this president do this months ago, advocating for social distancing and masks, do you think the country would be in a much different place right now?
I think so, absolutely, Don. I mean, if you look at countries that have really been able to dramatically bring down the curve overall infections, what do they have? What do they have that we didn't have? They did basic things here. These are called non-pharmaceutical interventions, NPIs, hand washing, physical distancing, and masks. And you just reminded, there was a study that came out today that said if you get a significant portion of the country doing that, you can dramatically control a pandemic. And by the way, this will sort of boggle your mind, Dom, but what does it mean to actually say we have this contained? We don't even barely talk about that term anymore. We always talk about trying to slow it down, trying to mitigate it, but the goal was always containment of this virus. That's 1 in a million people, new infections per day. So that'd be 350 roughly infections per day in the United States. That sounds preposterous considering we're over 60,000, but that's what the goal should have been, and it could have been achieved by those basic non-pharmaceutical interventions.
Science, right? But look, I do have to say, Dr. Gupta, the president was more realistic than usual today, but he still claimed that the virus would disappear. Please give us a reality about that.
Yeah, it's one of these things where when the novel coronavirus first came out, we didn't really know how contagious this was going to be. You remember SARS back in 2003. Ultimately, that was also coronavirus. That infected 8,000 people around the world, and about 800 people died. And then it sort of withered away because it wasn't that contagious. I think really since middle of February, we've known that this was very contagious and likely to become what they call endemic, sort of root itself in various communities around the world. So it's unlikely to go away until we develop a significant amount of immunity on the planet. And that's going to take years. Even with the vaccine, that's still going to take a long time to get to that point. So it's not just going to go away on its own by any means.
Yeah. Caitlin, the president also seemed to back down from cutting funding for coronavirus testing. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, this will be interesting to see what the Treasury Secretary and those who are actually negotiating these talks on Capitol Hill say about this, because what infuriated Republicans over the weekend was that they had this draft proposal, what they wanted to see in this next relief bill, this next coronavirus relief bill, and the White House moved to block the funding that they wanted to go to states for testing and money to go to the CDC. They said basically there was enough money in testing that there didn't need to be any more. It's a really difficult argument for the White House to make given how we are seeing what's going on with testing throughout the nation, but that's what they put forward. And so the president kind of backed off of that today, and the White House keeps saying they want to see targeted funding for testing, though they're not really being explicit about what that means. But I mean, we've got a long way to go before they come to any kind of agreement, not only just between the White House and Republicans, but then they've got to negotiate with Democrats. So we'll just wait to see what actually comes out in the wash out of all of this.
It's interesting when it comes to this story. Any one of the questions that I asked you guys before could have been the lead story and the lead question. The president saying that this is going to get worse before it gets better, advocating for social distancing, being more realistic today than usual about it going away, and then backing down on funding. But listen to this. I mean, this was surprising to me, Sanjay. New CDC data says that the number of cases says that the number of cases in some parts of the U.S. may be 10 times the number reported. Doesn't that show just how badly we need the funding for testing?
Yeah, I mean, we have been behind on testing since the beginning. As we talk about, Caitlin and I have talked about the lost month of February. What happened during that month? Well, the virus spread a lot during that month, and it was going largely unnoticed because we weren't testing. And that's why you need a lot more testing now. The president often says, look, we're doing more testing than any other country. That's true, but the thing is, we have a lot more virus in this country as well, and we're not even capturing, as you just pointed out, 10% of it. What struck me today, Don, I was talking to some sources, testing, if it's done right, you're supposed to be able to bring down the case counts. You find people, you isolate them, you prevent them from spreading it, you eventually get your arms around this thing. The way that testing is being used now, because we have so little of it, is essentially to identify fires around the country, right? We keep saying, oh, Arizona is now a hotspot, Texas, Florida, Georgia. We're just identifying hotspots so we can go rush there with the extinguishers and try and put out the fire.
Whack-a-mole.
That is not how you get ahead of a problem. Yeah, it's like whack-a-mole, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you both. I appreciate it. Have a good evening. Good to see both of you. President Trump trying to show you that he is taking the virus seriously now, months later, as he tanks in the polls. But will his new messaging last, or will he undermine it?
Oh,
as he so often does?
The Dangote Group stands at the forefront of African enterprise. Since 1978, we've touched the lives of millions of people by meeting their basic needs. Our belief in the promise of Africa has taken us into 14 African countries, with substantial investments that will propel the continent towards greater prosperity, promising jobs, improved standards of living, and economic growth. Dangote, for an empowered Africa.
아유.
Sanjay Gupta for a new CNN Global Town Hall. Coronavirus, Facts and Fears. Friday. This is CNN. 와, 더워.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
We always always had this thesis that, the world is transforming. People call it the digital transformation. We just call it, the global transformation in the world we live in the sense that people are moving from offline to online. I look at my kids, they use TikTok in a way that, I couldn't imagine myself. So I think new generations are just used to live online and kind of, transact online. So we are firm believers that the world is only going into one direction, and that's more online sales.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
The U.S. seeing more than 1,000 new coronavirus deaths today as President Trump holds his first coronavirus briefing since April. The president advising Americans to wear a mask, although he didn't wear one at the briefing. So let's discuss now. Ron Clanies, who's a former White House Ebola response coordinator. Ron, good to see you again. Thank you so much for coming in and doing this. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Don.
The president admitting the virus will get worse before it gets better and encouraging people to wear masks, socially distance. Yet he had no medical experts around him. What did you make of this version of President Trump?
Well, Don, I think at this point in time, I don't really care about the stagecraft. I don't care about who he had next to him or his tone or any of those things. The question is, we need action as a country. We need a testing strategy. We've needed one since January when we had an alert that this was coming. We still don't have one. People are still taking 6, 8, 10 days to get tests back. That's useless for managing the disease, as Dr. Gupta explained in your last segment. We did a national contact tracing strategy. The president did nothing on that today to say, hey, we're going to take this testing data, we're going to fine-tune the transmission, we're going to isolate it. No announcement on that today. We need to get the kind of gear our hospitals need, things to protect our healthcare workers. We need a national strategy on how and when to reopen businesses, on how and when to reopen schools. We got none of that from the president today. We did get a positive word about masks, long overdue. We did get some positive words about social distancing, things we've known for months. But on the things that the president alone could act on, still nothing today.
Well, long overdue. I would say it's, I hope it's not too late, but it's pretty far into this to be telling people it's time to wear masks. But Ron, didn't he say we're going to come up with a strategy or something like that? I'm paraphrasing. It's like, what has been happening all of these months?
Yeah, Don, I think the president keeps promising, like Wimpy from Popeye, Tuesday, that there'll be a testing strategy soon. There'll be other things soon. There'll be treatments soon, so on and so forth. But we are now 6 months into this. 6 months into the first really strong alarms coming up in January. 5 months after Dr. Nessie Messonnier of the president's own administration said this was going to be a significant event in the United States. A life-disrupting event in the United States.
13분밖에 안 했네.
Promising action.
아이고, 죽었다.
Not it anymore. It's long overdue. We're approaching 150,000 deaths in the next few days. And so to say now we're going to have strategies, one, it's way too late, and secondly, there's no reason to believe those promises now any more than when those promises were made in March. March 6th, the president said, anyone that wants a test in America can get one.
Yeah.
It is going to be August 6th soon. That is still not true.
Amazing and true what you just said. Well, let's talk about the reason. Well, some people are calling it a change in tone. Caitlin Collins said she didn't really think it was a change in tone. But the coronavirus has taken a political toll on the president, right? CNN's poll shows that Joe Biden is up 12 points nationally. Who you advised, by the way.
Yes.
Is that why we're seeing this change in tone, or so-called change in tone?
I assume so, Don. Obviously, if the president wasn't going to take the virus seriously as the deaths mounted, as the cases mounted, as people were crying on him to do so, as we see Europe, those of you watch TV from Europe, you see things in Europe, they're basically able to go back to life as normal, even though they had the same crisis we had in March. The president ignored all that. I presume it's the polling that now has the president talking better. But talking better isn't going to save lives. Yes, some good messages on masks will hopefully start to save lives. Yes, some good messages, but what we really need is action and leadership and a plan. We should have had it 6 months ago. We should have had it 5 months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago. We still don't have it today. That's what's really missing.
But Ron, you've known Donald Trump before, at least of him and his reputation, right? That's kind of promise, keep moving, keep making promises. Maybe it's part of the real estate development world that he's in. You know, I promise you're going to have the best view. I promise you that building is going to come down. I promise you your view is never going to change. I promise you this is going to be the best apartment. I promise you that you're going to double your money in less than a year. I promise, I promise, I promise. And this president, once again, on that note, trying to blame the Obama administration while playing up his own response. Listen to this.
The governors are working very, very hard, and we are supporting them 100%. Everything they need, they get, and we are taking good care. We have tremendous supplies and a great supply chain, whether it's ventilators or gowns or just about anything they need. So that's a big difference from inheriting very, very empty cupboards.
Okay, so the empty.
현재 한 3세트 한 것 같아요. 마지막 4세트를 해야 되는데.
Completely untrue. But also, let's remember, it was President Trump who pushed governors to reopen their states quickly. Would we even be in this situation if he hadn't downplayed this problem?
조금만 더
No,
쉬다 오고
we would be in
있습니다.
much better shape if the president hadn't, in January and February, downplayed this problem. If the president hadn't hoped that he could wish it away, promised it would disappear like a miracle. That's what he said in February, and he's repeated that again. Even today, he said it'll just go away. It'll just disappear eventually. That's not a plan. That's not action. And even that statement, forget about the lie about the Obama administration. Let's go to a more specific lie in that statement, that he's giving the governors whatever they want. Well, that's just not true. And it's not just Democratic governors who say that. The Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, published a piece last week where he made it very clear that he's not getting what he needs from the Trump administration. That's in public and on the record from a Republican governor. So the president has failed to deliver what our country needs, what our governors needs. He can try to blame it on Obama from 3 years ago, blame it on whatever. He's the president. He needs to take responsibility. Most importantly, he needs to fix what's still broken.
An interesting position for Italy to be in right now, but Italy announcing today it is out of the storm. We saw how bad the situation was there early on, and if you look at new cases in Italy compared to the U.S., Italy is just a blip. Even compared to the entire European Union, we're surging. And it's a similar story with deaths. Italy now near zero, while the U.S. is actually trending up. Why aren't we where Italy is now, Ron?
I think there are three big reasons why we aren't. First, we had this period in January and February. Sanjay just referred to it. This period where Trump tried to ignore the disease. Europe was getting ready for the crisis. They were ready when it hit. They got behind it first, but they were preparing in January and February. Trump was tweeting in January and February. Second, European countries had a big national response. All of Italy, all of France. President Trump from the start didn't want to own this. He asked each state to do it on their own. That's not enough. That doesn't work. People move between the states. You can't have a situation where Florida's quarantining New York's quarantining Florida. That's craziness. That's what we did here. And third, the president politicized these issues. Glad to see him talking about mask wearing now, but back 2 months ago, he was making fun of people for wearing masks. He belittled a White House reporter for wearing a mask. He was telling people, mask wasn't right for him. So all these things became very political in our country because of the president polarizing them, whereas in European countries, they had a public health response where people were coming together and addressing these issues. So those three big mistakes President Trump led to in this country, very different approach in Europe.
He reportedly said that people who wear masks he believed was against him, and that's why they were wearing the masks.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Ron Klain. I appreciate it. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me.
A GOP lawmaker reportedly making crass remarks aimed at Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over her stance on policing and crime. I'm going to talk to the reporter who overheard their conversation on the Capitol steps.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch. For easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Have you been bitten by the bug of curiosity? This is CNN 10. My name is Carl Azus. I'll be your explainer-in-chief.
Global news.
International relations are the key factors.
Relevant stories.
Everyday people whose action is changing their community.
Complex issues explained.
We're going back to the future.
And 10-second trivia.
You get a perfect 10 out of 10.
All in 10 minutes. Stream at cnn.com/CNN10.
My name is Abiola Fashina. I'm an emergency physician. And currently, I'm working with my group as the medical directors for the COVID Isolation Center in Lagos. What we do is we serve as the directors for day-to-day administration and clinical care at the center. But we're also the
팔굽혀펴기 20개만 하고 끝나겠습니다.
the sickest COVID patients.
못하겠어.
Working in that tent is mentally so challenging. You're constantly fighting your own anxiety and fear. When we go out, people are very appreciative of what we're doing, but you're sort of a leper. People like you, but they don't want you to come to their homes, and they don't want you to come and visit their families. And so really just dealing with that dual messaging, which is that you're vital, you're important, but you're also not somebody that we really want around. And so we sort of banded together at the center, and we've really become this family for ourselves, where we are supporting each other. But in the beginning, it was very frightening because you're worried that you're going to be the vector of disease, that you're going to be the one to bring this home to your loved ones. So it hasn't happened yet, thank God, but it's a real fear. COVID is real, it exists. And I know that it's challenging to do it everywhere, to social distance, to put your mask on, to do all the things that are important. But these things really help. I want to make a plea that everybody really needs to do those things.
Oh my God.